I was 45 when my life drifted so far off course that the only thing that made sense was buying a broken dream. An abandoned 62-foot yacht called the Sea Seraph, sitting at the edge of Bluewater Cove Marina like a ghost that nobody wanted. I was a construction worker with a failed business, a failed marriage, and a promise to my late father that I still hadn't kept, to scatter his ashes at sea from a boat I could call my own. So when that yacht went up at auction for less than a pickup truck, I raised my hand like a man grabbing the last lifeboat. The morning after the auction, I walked down the dock with a toolbox in one hand and hope in the other. The kind of shaky hope you don't say out loud in case you scare it away. The air smelled like salt and diesel, gulls screaming overhead, the Sea Seraph glowing under the dock lights like she'd been waiting for me. But the moment my boots hit the deck, my stomach dropped. There was smoke curling from the little chimney, the rich smell of fresh coffee, and the sound of laughter echoing up from below. I stepped down into the cabin and froze. A blonde woman in her 50s stood there in a floral robe, coffee mug in hand, wearing the kind of bored, sharp expression you only see on people who think they own the world. "Who are you?" she snapped, like I'd just kicked in her front door. "I'm the new owner of this yacht," I said, holding up my paperwork like a shield. She smiled, slow and poisonous. "That's cute," she said, "because this is my home." Her name, I would learn, was Marion Holt, and I was going to hear that name more times than I ever wanted. Within minutes, I was surrounded. Her husband, Victor Holt, stomped up from below, clutching a half-eaten sandwich, glaring at me like I'd broken into his kitchen. Behind him, two kids hovered in the doorway, a teenage boy, Logan, and his little sister, Sophie, wide-eyed and confused. Marion folded her arms, chin tilted. "We're not leaving," she announced. "This yacht is under the jurisdiction of the Bluewater Cove Harbor Association, and as president, I decide who stays." HOA, that cursed three-letter acronym I thought only applied to overwatered lawns and matching mailboxes, apparently existed on the water too. I tried to keep my voice level. "Ma'am, I bought this boat legally at auction. Here's the title, here's the bill of sale, state registration, and all." She glanced at the papers like they were grocery coupons. "Paperwork is adorable," she said. "But the association declared this vessel abandoned years ago. It's part of our community dock now. You're trespassing on community property." I felt my jaw clench, my fingers tighten around the folder. "I paid for it," I said quietly. "It's mine." Her smile turned smug, that HOA queen expression that says the rules are whatever she woke up feeling that day. "Take it up with the dock committee," she said. "In the meantime, you're making my family uncomfortable. Please leave the premises." Victor stepped closer, shoulders squared. "You heard my wife," he muttered. 10 minutes later, two guys in reflective vests showed up, not cops, just security on association payroll, asking me to de-escalate and respect HOA procedures. One of them told me, "Sir, you can't occupy the vessel while ownership is under review." Under review? I bought the yacht less than 24 hours ago, and somehow I was already an intruder on my own deck. By sunset, I was sitting in my old truck at the far end of the marina, watching strangers sip wine on the Sea Seraph, the same boat I'd just emptied my savings for. I slept there that night, staring through the windshield as my yacht glowed under the dock lights like a stolen chandelier. The next morning, a bright orange sticker screamed from the hull. "Violation. Unsafe vessel. Pending demolition hearing." I ripped it off. By noon, 3 more had appeared. When I stormed into the dock office, the manager, Russell Kane, just exhaled like a man who'd been tired for 10 years. "Look, Ethan," he said quietly, using my name like a warning. "Marion runs everything here. The Bluewater Cove Harbor Association, the maintenance budget, slip leases, even the cameras. You cross her, things get difficult." "Difficult," I repeated. "She's living in my yacht." He leaned in, eyes flicking toward the window. "Off the record, her husband used to work for county code enforcement, still has friends there. They can make life very long and very ugly." That's when I realized this wasn't just about squatters. It was about power, a floating little kingdom with Marion Holt on the throne and my yacht as her palace. Within days, she escalated. A public notice on the association bulletin board with my photo labeled me a trespasser under investigation. Then a community alert post on social media painting me as a predatory flipper trying to evict a poor family from their home on the water. Comments piled up. calling me a monster, greedy, heartless. I hadn't even had time to fix a single rotten board, and somehow I'd become the villain of Bluewater Cove. A county deputy showed up, Deputy Cole Harris, one of Marion's golf buddies, sunglasses on, voice flat, handing me a warning that I wasn't to set foot on the vessel until the association's claim was resolved. They're not owners, I protested. How can they claim occupancy? They filed a temporary affidavit, he said, shrugging. Board backed it. Take it up with the clerk. I just enforce. Behind him, at the edge of the dock, Marion watched with her arms folded and that wide, cruel smirk. Better luck next time, Mr. Cole, she called. Oh, and don't forget, fines accrue daily. By the end of the week, I'd been billed over $3,000 in violations, unauthorized presence, disturbing community peace, unlicensed renovation, inappropriate language, and my personal favorite, aggressive posture toward board member, all signed in dramatic blue ink by Marion Holt, president. I couldn't touch my own yacht without risking arrest, so I did the one thing my years in construction had taught me. I stopped swinging blindly and started looking for cracks in the foundation. I turned my truck into a surveillance post, camera propped on the dashboard, notebook in my lap. From that lonely parking spot, I watched Marion host cocktail nights on the Sea Seraph. HOA friends parading on and off my deck like they'd bought a timeshare in my rage. I filmed Logan fishing off the stern with my gear, Victor scrubbing the hull with my supplies, Sophie stringing fairy lights along the bow. My future had become the association's floating clubhouse. When anger stopped being useful, I turned to the one thing tyrants fear most: paperwork. I walked into the small trailer that served as association headquarters. Cheap gold plaque on the door, fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Marion glanced up from her desk, smile already fake. Mr. Cole, she cooed. Here to cause more trouble? No, I said. I'm here to request copies of all bylaws and dock management minutes for the last 5 years. For a heartbeat. Her smile twitched, then she laughed that brittle, "You can't touch me" laugh. You can try, she said. But this community is very tight-knit. Oh, I'm counting on it, I replied, pausing at the door. And by the way, nice listing on vacation rentals. For $150 a night for a privately managed community yacht is a steal. That was the first time I saw fear flash in her eyes, quick and sharp, like a fish darting just under the surface. That night, I pored over every rule I could get my hands on. Buried in all that HOA language, I found the first crack. The Bluewater Cove Harbor Association lease for water rights had expired 6 months earlier, never renewed. On paper, they could boss people around in the parking lot and picnic area, but the docks, slips, and moorings technically fell under state control, not theirs. I reached out to the State Maritime Resources Office, got a polite email back confirming exactly that: no jurisdiction over navigable waters. Any claim beyond the shoreline was unenforceable. I printed that email 10 times just to feel the ink under my fingers. Next, I called the only person stubborn enough to stand in this fire with me, my friend Marco Reyes, a social media bloodhound who could track down your third-grade teacher's wedding photos in under a minute. Within hours, he'd found Marion's rental listing under a fake host name. High-gloss photos of the Sea Seraph, my deck chairs, my woodwork, all sold as luxury marina retreat. Proceeds supporting community initiatives. She's running a full business on your boat, Marco said, shaking his head. That's not just shady, that's fraud. And she's using the association to protect it, I muttered. We bought a tiny covert camera, the kind contractors use on job sites, and hid it near a maintenance post where it had a perfect view of my yacht. For a week, it recorded Marion greeting guests with sugary smiles and association brochures. Victor hauling luggage aboard, Logan acting like a junior tour guide. Then on the 4th night, the jackpot. Marion taking fat envelopes of cash at the dock, bypassing the rental platform entirely. I gathered screenshots, video stills, lease records, the state email, everything, stuffed it into a folder and marched back into that humming trailer. Didn't I make it clear you're not allowed on community property? Marion asked sweetly. Good thing this isn't community property, I said, dropping the folder on her desk. Your water rights lease is dead, and you've been running a private business on a boat you don't own. She slid the folder back with 2 fingers. Allegations like that can be considered harassment, she said, voice dropping. And people who cause trouble around here usually move away or disappear quietly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was the kind of quiet threat you only hear from people convinced they're untouchable. I left without another word, but my phone was recording the whole thing, little red light blinking like a heartbeat. That night, Marco showed up at my truck with 2 coffees and the kind of grin that meant he'd found dynamite. "County estate records," he said, handing me his tablet. Previous owner of the Sea Seraph was Captain Walter Briggs. He listed a caregiver on his paperwork. Want to guess who? I didn't have to, but I asked anyway. Marion Holt, Marco confirmed. She worked part-time through a nonprofit. His life insurance beneficiary got changed 3 months before he died. Guess whose name is on it? 40 grand. The marina had never marked the boat as abandoned while Walter was alive. After he died, the association labeled it derelict. Then Marion graciously volunteered to transfer it to community management. I realized I wasn't just fighting a bully. I was fighting a long con. That's when Marco gave me the name of a lawyer who didn't scare easy, Charlotte Lane, a maritime property attorney with a voice like cold steel. She read my notes, flipped through the evidence, and said, "You're looking at overreach, occupancy fraud, and probably commercial misuse of private property. If the expired lease holds, we can rip their authority apart in court." "I don't want a courtroom trophy," I told her. "I want my boat back." "Then we hit their reputation and their legality at the same time," she said. "We sent a cease and desist to the board, citing state maritime statutes and unlawful commercial use of private property, and turned everything over to the Maritime Investigations Division and the State Special Prosecutions Bureau." The tone at Bluewater Cove changed overnight. The violation letters stopped, the smear posts vanished, Marion went quiet, and that silence felt worse than the noise. Then came the clanging of metal at dawn. I bolted down the dock to see Victor untying my mooring lines, grinning like a man stealing a car in broad daylight. "We're relocating for safety," he said. "Association orders. You touch that yacht, and I'll make sure you're the one in cuffs," I warned. From behind him, Marion filmed on her phone. "Smile, Ethan," she called. "Wouldn't want the board thinking you're violent again." I didn't lunge, didn't shout. I just looked her in the eye and said, very quietly, "You picked the wrong man to steal from." Within 24 hours, Charlotte had a restraining injunction signed by a judge, forbidding the association from moving or altering the Sea Seraph. We taped copies right to the hull. When Marion saw the order with the state seal on it, she almost choked on her latte. Not long after, I got a call from Agent Lucas Ramirez at the Maritime Investigations Division. Calm voice, clipped sentences. "Mr. Cole, this isn't the first complaint against Ms. Holt or your association," he said. "We've had reports of financial irregularities and an illegally seized dock slip. What you've sent us, plus the expired lease and the rental scheme, puts her in very deep water." For weeks, Marco and I collected everything. Every fake violation letter, every suspicious transaction, every late-night visit by board members dragging boxes off my boat. We caught Victor hauling a black duffel to Neil Carter, the treasurer, and Marion whispering with Elaine Turner, the secretary, in the shadows of her SUV. "Congratulations," Charlotte told me, watching the footage. "You just caught a conspiracy to conceal evidence." That's when the first real threat arrived. A plain white envelope under my truck's wiper, no return address, just one typed line. "Stop digging, or the next thing you lose won't be a boat." Marco wanted to call the cops, Charlotte agreed. But I'd already lost a business, a marriage, and years of my life to regret. "You can't scare a man who's already lost everything," I said. "We keep going." So we set the trap. The routine compliance meeting that Elaine scheduled was anything but. The marina's small conference hall was packed. Familiar faces from the docks, the same people who'd whispered behind my back for months. Marion sat at the head in a bright red blazer, chin high, eyes sharp. "This meeting," she began, "is about Mr. Cole's continued noncompliance and harassment of our community." I didn't argue. I just slid a document across the table. "This is your expired water rights lease," I said. "Signed by you, never renewed." She scoffed, called it irrelevant. So I laid out the next set of pages, photos of her rental listing, guest reviews, the cash handoff footage, maintenance fees for repairs that never happened. Gasps rippled through the room. HOA faithful suddenly shifting in their chairs. "This is defamation," she snapped, voice rising. "It's evidence," I said. "And so is this." I opened the final page. Captain Walter Briggs never signed his insurance over to you willingly. Handwriting analysis says it was forged. You didn't just steal my boat. You stole from a dying man. Silence fell like a dropped anchor. Before Marion could spin another lie, Agent Ramirez rose from the back row, badge in hand, voice firm. Marion Holt, please remain seated, he announced. There is an active federal investigation into fraud, forgery, and embezzlement connected to this association. Her face drained of color. Victor bolted for the door and was intercepted by two agents. Laptops, files, and ledgers were seized. When they finally cuffed Marion, she twisted toward me and hissed, "You think you've won, Ethan? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Yeah," I said softly. "That's exactly what you got wrong." That night, for the first time in months, the Sea Seraph sat dark and empty. I walked along the dock, laid my hand on her hull, and whispered, "Welcome home." But deep down I knew people like Marion don't drown quietly. They claw and drag and bite all the way down. The investigation exploded. The IRS and the state's Special Prosecutions Bureau joined in. They uncovered offshore accounts in places like Azure Cay and Corona Atoll, all routed through a shell company called Oceancrest Holdings LLC. Board members cracked one by one. Elaine admitted she'd signed blank checks. Neil confessed to laundering money through fake construction invoices. Even Victor turned on his wife for a reduced sentence. Still, Marion fought from behind bars, filing motions, claiming she was the victim of a misogynistic smear campaign, using the association's insurance policy to pay for her defense. Until the board was dissolved, she was technically still president of a sinking ship. When the verdict finally came down, it was brutal and clean: fraud, forgery, embezzlement, elder financial abuse, tax evasion, witness intimidation. Marion Holt, life in federal prison with no chance of parole. Victor got 15 years, Neil and Elaine 7 each. The little kingdom of Bluewater Cove Harbor Association collapsed overnight. The Sea Seraph was released from evidence, and I renamed her Freedom's Wake. The first morning I stepped back on board as her rightful owner. The cabin still smelled faintly of lavender cleaner, but the air felt lighter, like somebody had opened a window in my chest. Marco whistled at the sunrise. Charlotte stepped aboard with the official paperwork dissolving the association and transferring dock management to neutral state oversight. "You're free," she said simply. The word tasted strange and good on my tongue. I restored the yacht the way I'd always imagined, sanded every rail, polished every fitting, rebuilt the engines, and when she was finally ready, we took her out past the breakwater. Just me, Marco, and Charlotte, the ocean stretching out like a second chance. I scattered my father's ashes into the wind, fulfilling the promise I'd made long before I ever knew Marion's name. "Goodbye, Dad," I whispered. Took the scenic route, but I made it. In the months that followed, Freedom's Wake became more than my escape. With Charlotte's help and the cooperation of Captain Briggs' nephew, Owen Briggs, we started the Walter Briggs Foundation, a small nonprofit that helped seniors and vulnerable homeowners fight back against predatory boards and fake community power. We turned the old HOA office into Briggs Pier Cafe, the docks filled with families again. Music instead of warnings, laughter instead of fines. Every now and then a letter would arrive from North Gulf Federal Center, written in sweeping, angry cursive. "You may have my association, but you'll never have peace. Tides turn. Ethan." Signed only MH. I stopped reading them. The last one went straight into the galley stove on Freedom's Wake, the flame curling the paper into ash. One evening, as the sun bled into the water and the lights of Bluewater Cove shimmered on the surface, I saw the new plaque at the end of the rebuilt dock. "In memory of the Bluewater Cove case. May truth always outweigh authority." We took the yacht out again that night, just the three of us, blues music low, engines humming, stars scattering across the sky. To Captain Walter Briggs, the man who started all this without knowing, Charlotte toasted. To Ethan Cole, Marco added, grinning, the guy who just wanted to fix a boat and ended up fixing a town. I laughed, but when the sound faded, the quiet that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was full, the kind that sits in your chest and makes room for something new. If this whole mess taught me anything, it's that power doesn't become dangerous all at once. It grows in the spaces where good people decide it's not worth the fight, where fines seem easier to pay than to challenge, where letters and threats and gossip wear you down until you start to believe that that's just the way it is. But rules don't define fairness. People do. And people like Marion Holt only win when everyone else decides to look away. So here's my question for you. Now that you've heard my story, when someone like her starts ruling your world with fear and paperwork, do you keep your head down and hope the tide turns on its own? Or do you take the wheel and turn it yourself?